Test, test. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. There it is. There it is. Dave, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It's a little bit after 9. And so it is time for us to get started. A few minutes after 9 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. It's good to see those who have turned out this morning. Even some faces, a few faces we haven't seen in a while. But good to have you all. And for those who are online, if we have any participating with our class online, we want to welcome you as well. We have been studying now for months, really more than a year. We've been studying this on the topic of walking with Jesus. And so if we have any who are new to joining our class today, then again, just be advised that this is our topic of study. And by walking with Jesus, what we mean by that is we have been tracking Jesus' ministry in chronological order. And we have been looking at every instance where Jesus has done any teaching whatsoever to individuals, to his disciples, to crowds, in chronological order, and we've just been unpacking the teaching to see what it meant, what it means to us today, what it meant there, and so on and so forth. And so we will continue our study this morning. I'll turn this up. So we're going to continue our study this morning, picking up in Luke chapter 12, and we'll do that in just a minute. Before we begin this morning, I just want to plug, I'm calling a timeout just to plug one thing. So, we, the Deep River, we've been doing, on Sunday evenings, we've been having our so-called small group Bible studies. And there are many of those that convene in different places. There is a small group study that convenes here at the building, usually right after morning worship service, and there's a meal that's usually prepared. There are some who have in their homes, usually in late afternoon or early evenings in their homes, face-to-face, in Greensboro, High Point, Thomasville, and so on and so forth. And there is also one that is convened on Zoom. So for those who just can't get out or don't want to get out, you're welcome. There's no special invitation that's needed. Our sister Debbie Hayes every Sunday evening will send an email out to the congregation that has a link that you can just click on that link and it'll bring you right to that Zoom meeting. But really want to invite as many who are interested. We meet at 5 o'clock, and it really is a small group. And so we meet at 5 o'clock on Zoom, and when we do that, our study time together will usually last somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes, usually, maybe 45 minutes. But usually 5 to 5:30 or 5 to 5:45. So Sister Debbie she'll do it again. She'll send that email link out this afternoon, but would love to have as many of you who are interested to sit by your computer and just be part of a small group study that's virtual. Would love to have you. All right, so yes, ma'am. On the announcements, forgot about that. So, and Sister Debbie is reminding me that on the announcement slides that we have, they were on when before our class. They'll come on again between Bible class and worship service. There is a QR code that will come up, and if you're tech savvy, you just pull up your mobile phone and sort of snap a picture of that, so to speak, or just hold it up and let your camera read that code, and it will also take you to the link for that website. So again, 5 o'clock, that's every Sunday. Most Sundays we do that, so would love to have you join that small group study as well. Okay, so here we are. We are in Luke chapter 12. We're picking up our Walking with Jesus study. We will be looking this morning at verses 35 through 48 of Luke 12. I just want to remind you that from the last couple classes we had, Jesus just finished teaching on greed and covetousness. You might remember that. So he had done some teaching on greed and covetousness, and now, and we had covered that in essentially You know, he started that teaching around verse 13 through verse 34. I want to remind us that, that he is still in the same place. He's still talking to the same people. And so his discourse continues. He hasn't changed location. His audience hasn't changed, but his topic changes. So now we're going to continue looking at his study, starting in verse 35. Would love a couple readers to help us read through this. So anyone, I need two people. Anyone, so Mark will be one. Anyone else read for us? Well, Mark, will you get it all for us? The whole thing, 35 through 48, please. Good long passage. Thank you so much for reading that. All right, all right. So here we are again. This is part of a discourse of teaching that begins for Jesus at Luke chapter 12 verse 1 and continues, I believe, through chapter 13 verse 9. But we're isolating just a piece of it. And one more time for emphasis. The teaching that Jesus covered before is warnings against greed and covetousness, and now the subject changes. So Mark just read, I don't know, probably 18 verses. He read a long passage there. So my question to you is, and I'm putting it up on the board, I want you to give me just one word or one phrase that summarizes Jesus' teaching that Brother Mark just read. If we had to sum all that up into a word or a phrase, what would that be? What is his message? Yes, sir.
Be prepared.
Be prepared, Brother Keith says. Do you agree with Brother Keith or do you disagree with Brother Keith? What do you think? Brother Keith says that he thinks that to sum it up, a phrase to sum up all of that teaching would be prepared. Do you agree with that? All right. Well, we got some head nods, so the shepherd speaks well. I agree. Be prepared, be ready. You might say be on alert. So I think that's a good capture. So let's break it down. And I want us to look at verses 35 through 40. Let's walk through it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, didn't he say that to know, not to obey, is worse than not to know?
Well, he does say that. Yeah, he mentions that. He mentions that right around, what is it? Right around verse 47-ish. So yes, he does. He does say that. We're going to get to that specific piece. It'll be interesting for us to talk through what that means. But you're absolutely right, sir. He does say that. So let's go back to the beginning, verse 35. One more time for emphasis. Verse 35, he says, and I want to highlight here. Some of your versions, bless you, Jared. Some of your versions say, "Be dressed in readiness." Others of your versions might say, "Let your loins be girded," right? So let's just go one by one. What does that mean when Jesus says, "Be dressed in readiness," and keep your lamps alight? Let your loins be girded. What does that mean? What does that mean? Charles, you had your hand up. What does that mean? I'm sorry? Be ready. All right, so be ready. So I would agree. He's saying, when he says be dressed, he's saying to wrap ourselves in something, and the something that we should wrap ourselves in is readiness, to be ready. That's exactly right. I do want to point out a technical thing here, that that verb ready, to be dressed in readiness, it is in the perfect tense. And the reason that I emphasize that is because the perfect tense it is a verb form that describes a process that began in the past but continues today. So what he's saying is that there's something that has happened to you in your life in the past that should prompt you to continue to be ready even now. Be ready. I want to suggest that be ready, those of us who are baptized believers in Jesus Christ, that was the start of our readiness. That happened in the past. But that readiness didn't stop then. Some of us have been Christians for 50 years in here. We are to always be ready. Let your loins be girded, he says. Then in verse 36, he goes on and he says, some of your versions say, be like men, or be like servants who wait for their master. One more time, again, that wait for their master is a continuous verb. Not a point in time situation, but we are to always be waiting eagerly for our master to return. That is a state that we should always be living in, a mindset that we should always be living in, that we're always ready, we're always waiting for our master to return. In verse 37, he goes on and he says, blessed are those slaves whom the master shall find on the alert. Some of your versions say, or who the master finds them watching. Again, another reference to this idea of being aroused, that we're not sleeping, that we're ready, we're waiting, we're watching, we're on alert, we're doing something as children of God. That's what he says here. And verse 37 is also interesting. I want to get your take on this. So he says, blessed are those slaves whom the master shall find on the alert when he comes. And what does Jesus go on to say? When the master finds the slaves on the alert, how will the master respond? What does he say there in the second part of verse 37? What will happen in the second part of verse 37? What's it say there? Thank you. It says, in fact, if you don't mind, read that second, just read that whole verse for us, please. Melania, would you just read that whole verse for us, 37, please?
It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. I tell you the truth, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them.
Okay. So I find this to be interesting. I want us just to